Hello and welcome to our show One-on-One on Urban Update. Today we are with Mr. MADHAV Pai, who is the WRI's and BARC India Head for Sustainable Transport. We will talk about urban mobility in India and how it has changed and what are the future prospects for cities in India. So welcome to our show, Mr. MADHAV.
Thank you.
So we will start with, because you have worked on BRT in different cities of India, we will start with BRT. What is the future of BRT in India?
So, see, BRT as a technology, serves a very good purpose. It's a very cost-effective way of creating high-quality mass transportation systems. Yeah, if you look at the corridor in Indore today, that 11-kilometer corridor is now carrying 75,000 people. They are recovering all of their costs. So it's a, from a cost perspective
and sustainable.
Cost perspective, it's a sustainable mode also, right? So, we are, but one of the challenge in India's cities is we can't really have, especially as you go to the smaller cities, trip lengths are small. People go 4 or 5 kilometers. So for 4 or 5 kilometers trip, people don't really care for mass transport. So, mass transport is more needed in the big cities.
20 kilometers.
Yeah, 8, 10, 12 kilometers, right? And then in the smaller cities on some corridors, right? Some main roads. Otherwise, the rest of the transport is by minibuses, rickshaws and all of that sort of thing. So coming back to your question on BRT. See, I think big cities, after what happened in Delhi, in India, are very afraid to do BRT politically. Having said that, it's a lost opportunity. Cities all over the world, like Rio and Mexico City, are building BRTs. Yes. So we are not doing it, we were losing. We are going with the more expensive choice of metro. Now the problem is metro, in the end you have to pay for it. Yes, right? It costs a lot of money, and especially now cities like Kochi, Lucknow, where 30,000-40,000, maybe 100,000 people will use.
To put in perspective, what is the per kilometer cost of metro and BRT?
So metro is about 300 crores per kilometer. BRT will be 15 to 30 crores per kilometer based on the. So it's 10 times, right? 10 times, right? And so that's what I mean. With Lucknow, see, Kochi today now they are, given there is a new communist government, they are asking the right questions. They are saying, why are we building this metro if it's only 30-40,000 people every day? How are we going to recover the cost? It's such a massive infrastructure. Same thing, actually the Delhi Chief Minister questioning the phase 4 of Delhi metro is a good thing, because in the end, somebody will have to pay the debt. Yes, right, true, and so that debt issue is going to not go away. So I think BRT provides a cost-effective option. It's just that politically we have to be courageous to do it.
But I think that politically it is very attractive, because when you are going for a manifesto and you tell people that we are going to come out with some metro plan for a city, then it is a politically very attractive promise.
No, it's politically attractive. Also, it's also a 4,000 crore project. No, so there is enough money for everybody in it. So.
But for making promise in a political manifesto, it is very feasible for them, because they get votes and all these things. Like bullet train, we made it was.
So we'll see whether we will get votes. See, this is more the upper middle class. So Delhi is another great example where if you work on healthcare, education, which is where you need to spend the money. People, Aam Aadmi supports you, right? It's a good example. We are seeing that. So I think that is, the reality. I think it's more the big contracts and big contractors that are actually pushing the metro.
What do you think? What was the learning and why this Delhi corridor failed?
For many reasons. See, BRT, one, you have to be able to. Delhi was much more of Delhi. See, BRT is equally about reorganizing operations. Yes. Okay. And so to see, in the end, if you do a corridor for mass transit, 60-70% people, the whole trip has to be met. 5 kilometers didn't solve anything. So you have to pick a corridor which is, where at least 70% of the people, their whole trip need is met.
Like from residential to industrial?
Not necessarily residential, from one place to another, where even last mile connectivity they can do, but 5 kilometers is not solving anybody's problem. So I think once you do a first corridor, it has to be substantial, it has to cater to certain people, because then those people will support the project, right?
Definitely.
So I think in Pune, I think you are seeing that, right? Especially in this Pimpri-Chinchwad corridor, even the quality and all has huge issues. There are a certain class of people who are using it on an everyday basis, and they are supporting the project, right? So I think So I think that's one of the big things in Delhi.
What are the good examples in India that you want to showcase that?
See, Indore is very good. I think Indore, I think project is doing very well. They're recovering costs and things like that. Surat now is coming up quite nicely. Surat has expanded its network. Ahmedabad, there are challenges in the newer parts of the corridor. They don't have as much ridership. Okay.
But in Ahmedabad, we also see, because do you think that when we are making this corridors for specifically for buses, so also these, when the cars starts using it, so it's a problem then?
Yeah, of course, cars shouldn't be.
I saw in Ahmedabad.
Now they actually, Ahmedabad, they are struggling because riders, they, especially on the newer parts, they haven't got ridership. Right, on that Narol-Naroda corridor, people are still preferring to use the share autos because again trip lengths are small. So I think care has to be taken. I think Ahmedabad, the network ended up being a little too big. So not all some corridors are working well. Not some corridors are not working well. So I think corridors that don't work well maybe. So I mean that's why actually doing a good study. You know, that way corridors. You know, that way, you know, Lucknow also is not working well, and Nagpur is. I mean Kochi and Nagpur also will not work. But you know, those things you can't tear down, right? BRT is easy to tear down, so it becomes much more a victim.
Other vehicles can also use that corridor.
Correct. But so that, and you know, what you have to remember is not just the cost of construction, it's the cost of operation. Metro costs as much as it costs to construct, it costs to operate over 20 years. So you know, if you have built 5,000 crore project, you need another 5,000 crores to operate it. This is in addition to getting revenue, ticket fare and all of that. So it's also expensive. Look how expensive Delhi Metro is right now. So now it has gotten to a point where, you know, poor people are eliminated, so it becomes a middle class thing, you know. And so I think
it does not serve the purpose.
It does not serve the purpose. So if it's not public transport then anymore, you know, we call it not mass transit but class transit. Okay. So you know, you don't want to build class transit in cities, which is what metros, if you want to manage the cost happens, otherwise you have to subsidize it. So, and you can subsidize metros. See, if you want to build metros, you can subsidize it. There you have to capture land value, and the land value has to be captured and put back into the project, right?
True.
Private developers capturing land value is land value gone into private good. If you are able to capture the land value and put it back in the project, then you build metro. So you know, as long as you can, so metro is good if you are able to capture land value.
The government has understood this, or they are still going for metro? Because
I think some political pressure. Now this metro rail policy isn't exactly that thing. I don't know if you know the metro rail policy they've launched. So they are asking questions about what they are doing about, you know, doing land value capture, how are they going to do revenues, have they done alternative analysis. So these kinds of questions are now being asked. Some, you know, some projects have been also sent back. So Chennai extension was sent back, you know, Kochi they have been asking questions about. So I think the metro rail policy is good, which reflects sort of that the government is at least asking the right questions of the state governments and things like that when they are coming for the metro.
So talking about this, about the metro and BRT, what do you think? What is the future of urban mobility, especially now electric cars are coming up, and so do we have that kind of infrastructure to support sustainable transport type of electric cars? Because why I ask this question, because when we started promoting e-rickshaws, it has become a mess in Delhi. If you go to Tamnagar, you go to Karol Bagh, it's a complete mess because of in operation, the operational management is not there. The people are not able to manage it. It is creating problem for traffic and for other road users.
So I think you have asked multiple questions. So let me see. I think mass transport on major arterials we will have to create. I think there is no option. Right? Then you have to make the most cost-effective, sustainable alternative. You have to choose. Right? And a lot of times these are not just, you know, techno-economic decisions, are political decisions.
Sure.
So in that context, you know, in the political context, you have to make the decision. No. So mass transit is necessary, especially on the major arterials in cities, right? So that is so. But beyond that, now we are really seeing a lot of new types of sharing that is emerging, right? In India, electrification actually will happen more in the 2-3 wheeler segment than in cars, right?
Okay.
See, we have a majority of people still use 2-wheelers in us. So, you know, maybe we should, you know, we can probably come up with ways in which, you know, you have shared 2-wheelers. You know, 2-wheelers are very cost effective actually, and so you shared 2-wheelers, shared buses, these kinds of things can come up and actually become the alternative to transport. So I think that so, you know, there is a huge opportunity for India to rethink whether with 2-3 wheelers we can actually expand beyond the major arterial. Can we provide sort of public transport where, you know, you can have unified payments and some kind of public-private partnerships where entrepreneurs are running it, but with some kind of control or regulation that it has some control on them, and we can then have services that are 2-wheelers, 3-wheelers, 12-seaters, 18-seaters that then complement based on demand. Then there is always going to be some corridors that will need service where there will be not enough demand, right? That government has to subsidize. See, some amount of subsidy is required for public transport. You are not going to be able to run, you know, without on profit everything, right? So some corridors will require the major arterials. You need mass transport that will probably run on its own, or, you know, if you do land value capture, you can even do metro sustainably, cost sustainably. Then there will be some corridors where all of these shared cab, all of these people will go because they will actually make profit. And then there will be some routes where you will need to put some subsidy or some incentive for people to go. But for this, you know, today you have to have a solid data backbone to do all of this planning. And now with mobile phones and digital payments and all of that, you can track pretty much everything in a city, that you can actually have this data, and then you can do data driven planning. And, you know, you can share the data, can also be shared between private sector and public sector and all of everybody. So, and you can sort of, you know, the people can then use that data to design their systems on their own. So I think this is the future actually.
Do we have infrastructure at this point in time? Do we have infrastructure for electric vehicles when we say that?
See, charging infrastructure will have to be put in place. Right now our charging infrastructure is very limited.
Yes.
So I think charging infrastructure slightly systematically put will be required as we ramp up electric vehicles. Some of it will be home charging, but some amount of charging will also be required. I think, you know, if you don't get too many load peaks and all of that, then the battery life increases and all of that. So I think we will need charging infrastructure will need to be put in place. I think 2-wheelers fairly quickly will become sustainable. So, you know, you can buy a diesel 2-wheeler, electric 2-wheeler. For you it will be the same thing, only new financing models etc. have to be figured out, because battery financing and, you know, vehicle financing and all of that has to. So I think that we still have to understand the impact on the grid, how that will get managed. Then I think we should clearly think of ways in which we can use renewable energy. You know, also storage is required for renewable energy, and actually the electric vehicle batteries become storage for renewable energy, right? So that actually having that storage capacity in the vehicles actually is very good. Because you are producing all of this renewable energy, but you need to store it somewhere. So the batteries become a good place to store it, right? So this combination of battery storage, so, you know, battery is going to become a big business, and I think India needs to, you know, people talk about lithium and all of these materials and all of that, but that cost is only 20%. Then it takes the remaining 80% of the cost is assembling and putting into battery. India needs to make sure that all of that battery manufacturing happens in India, and that, you know, we make a business out of it. So I think electric vehicles are going to happen, right? They can either happen from China, or we can make them in India, and, you know, and make them in India and make sure we don't lose the economic opportunity, because it's going to be cheaper. What happened in the solar business is going to happen, right? Prices are going to fall. So
my concern is also that when we met last time, so we talked about the safety component of 2-wheelers, and you talked about Pune study when you said that if a person is riding a 2-wheeler for 20 years, the probability is that he will meet with a fatal accident. He may lose limb or may die also. So what is your view at now?
So we'll finish the electric conversation. So like I said, you know, mass transit on major arterials, you know, doesn't matter whether it's electric or not. If you're going to do shared, all of that, you know, that has to happen. If it happens electric, it's that much clean. Coming to see, safety is a huge issue, right? I think safety is a huge issue in all our cities. 150,000 people are dying, whether it's two-wheelers or pedestrians or whatever. Two-wheelers and pedestrians are the. So I think from a safety perspective, we have we have to completely reimagine our cities, right? We call them. We have to make slow streets, right? And that point which we have been trying to make is that if you look at roads the way we design them today, we design them for design speeds of 60 kilometers an hour, 80 kilometers an hour, 100 kilometers an hour. That design of the roads has to change, because nobody goes more than 20 kilometers an hour. So you should redesign the road, because all the accidents happen at night, or they happen when there is some collision with buses. So there are very specific places where the accidents happen. So I think some amount has to be done through education and helmets and all of that. But I think there is a huge part of it can be done by redesigning the roads, where there is space for people to walk, where the carriageway is designed for heterogeneous traffic, which is what we have in India's roads, and basically slow streets, right? The streets that are designed for 25 or 30 kilometers per hour. And it doesn't cost much to do it, right? It's just that when you do it like this, right?
So interventions.
And whenever every 2 years they redo the road. So when they do it, they can put in all of these features. You have to put bollards, you put speed humps, you reduce the side distance, you make sure the turnings are 90 degrees. So all of these things, make it. When you're designing a highway, you want people to go fast, you want them to see far, right? When you're in cities, you want people to go slow, you don't want to see them far. So you put obstructions like trees or junctions or buildings, you slow it down, you make lanes narrow.
We're talking about that safety of pedestrians in Indian roads, when the government and the state government, they are widening our roads to for cars especially. So what are your views?
Yeah, so as I said, I think we need to segregate, right? There's pedestrians and two-wheeler safety also. So road ideally should have 3 spaces, right? Less than 10 kilometers an hour for people who are walking, cycling, doing whatever, at less than 10 kilometers an hour. Then 10 to 30 kilometers an hour, where two-wheelers, rickshaws, all sort of, even cars can coexist. And then something that is like 50 kilometers an hour, where ideally you should put buses, because you want to move the most people in that space, right? But you can allow maybe so this type of thinking has to come in road design, right? I mean, I agree with you, I think, and so this requires some major education.
Some innovative ideas also, because you have been working with many cities in India and abroad also. So what are your innovative approaches of city governments, especially you see in implementing road plans and implementing some traffic regulations? Like I've heard of that in many cities, that if in a car there are 4 people, there are different lane for them, and then they can go fast. If there is 1 people in a car, then there is a different lane for them. So these kind of innovative ideas will work in India.
I mean, that is also in the US, where they have lots of roads, right? So if they have 6-lane roads, and then 1 lane they are giving to people in 3, and 90% of the people are driving in. So I don't think that is applicable so much for us. For us, 40% people are using public transport. We need to give priority to people in buses. And maybe in 4-seater cars also we can allow, that is fine. But I think the focus still has to be on big buses. But I think going back to your safety question, I think this designing to design speed, right, I think is an important thing. And you need to think about innovative ways in which you can make it, right? So if you see what lot of cities abroad have been doing, is they're also using temporary installations. So they use traffic cones, they use like these temporary materials to test these new designs of roads, and then they make it permanent after 6 months or 1 year, once people have got used to it, right? So they put material that will only last 6 months, and then they pour real concrete and make it hard. So this approach of doing temporary sort of retrofits, getting people's feedback, and then making it permanent, I think, and this is some of the things we have experimented in Bombay also. A few junctions in Linking Road, SV Road junction, we have redesigned. So we had to use barricades and ropes and all to redesign the junction. And then now it's got permanent. The police also got convinced. Initially they're saying you are taking away space, traffic will slow down. Then they saw actually by channelizing the traffic, by aligning two legs of where people are moving, creating space for pedestrians, we actually, their traffic flow actually improved. So by slowing speed, you actually improve traffic flow by doing much more better organized design. So this, and so this you can do with temporary, and once people get used to it, then you make it permanent. So this, New York changed their whole city like this, one after another.
Gradually.
Every weekend they would do one intersection, leave it, people would come, they would get used to it, 6 months later they would make it permanent. So this is an approach of sort of how you can also change people, and I think more and more cities are doing it. So I think, Mumbai is going to be a good example of that. So
I saw that one presentation yesterday where you redesigned a particular junction.
Yeah, now 10-15 junctions we have done. Here Bharat Mata junction we have done close by, Nagpada junction.
Okay.
So all of these things.
What has been your experience and how people have responded?
So I said, first police was saying doesn't work, but once they saw that speeds are slowing down, pedestrians are moving in a much more orderly fashion, and traffic flow is actually improving. Now every time any complicated junction comes, they come to us saying, can you help us?
What do you think that for sustainable transport, then the government has also come with the mobility policy also. So what is the sustainable transport for tomorrow?
I mean, sustainable transport for tomorrow is shared, less private ownership, right? Clear, that is one. I think basically as much as, and the sharing will now be enabled by more data about where people are traveling, what is going on, digital payments, one single payment system across systems, and people then being able to choose between alternatives. So that is the future, right? And I think government's role is going to be much more of an enabler, and in some cases they will have to also provide some sort of a viability gap funding or subsidy. So I think government's role has to be much more of an enabler. They are subsidized by a lot of these private equity investments and things like that. So they will people are used to this service. They will increase prices and they will become profitable. There will be two-wheelers, there will be three-wheelers, they will all be on the platform. That will happen eventually. Some platform, it may not be Uber, Ola, but they will, so you will be able to access on a platform and pay digitally, right? It may be Ola's platform that is expanded, or it may be some other platform. Whether Ola, Uber will provide it, or some other form of enterprise will end up sort of providing that service. That is something to be seen.
Thank you, Madhav. Nice talking to you.
Yeah, thank you, Abhishek.
Thank you
very much.
So we were talking to Mr. MADHAV Pai. Now we will meet some expert in urban area, maybe in different domain of urban development in our next episode. Thank you.